Dan, I'll pass it over to you, if you'd like, and you can get us going.
Perfect. So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone that joined us today. We appreciate you spending some time with Presidio. I know you all have busy days, and it's an honor for you to spend some time with us. My name is Dan O'Brien. I'm our Chief Solutions Officer at Presidio. I have responsibility for our portfolio, the technologies that we want to invest with, and I get the pleasure of leading the architecture team that makes this all real for our customers. So I've got a great audience with me today. I'll introduce them in just a minute. But I wanted to just start kind of at the very quick to give you a quick view on Presidio and some of the technology updates that we've been investing in over the last couple of years that we feel makes us uniquely positioned to bring subject matter expertise around the topic of generative AI. So when people ask me, what does Presidio do? It's really four simple things. All facets of physical technology and helping our customers modernize that. In this distributed world that we live in, on-premise, cloud, and remote workforces, we're helping them have the right security strategy in that new world. And we're helping our customers on their digital transformation journey as they reimagine how applications and technology can help drive, their organization and their business forward. And as you can imagine, right, since the start of time in IT, we've always had to help our customers think about cost optimization. And all of these things we're delivering in a way, right, where we provide not only architecture and delivery, but ongoing day two operations and management. And we're doing that, internally investing in AI and AI operations to do it very effectively and cost effectively for our customers. Now, what's been exciting about getting to do this is we've done this both on premise and in the cloud, right? Our expertise, right, started years ago in foundational IT, but we made significant investments. And we feel like we're in a unique position as customers navigate. I need to solve a problem and make a technology decision. Should I do it in the cloud? Should I do it on premise? We've got almost an equal balance of technology professionals that are sitting in each place. Now, what I'm super excited about today is what we're finding in this ever-changing AI landscape. All four of these things that we've been focused on really actually have to come together in a meaningful way. Right, we have to have the right infrastructure stack, security posture changes, right? How we write applications on top of it, and really make a huge difference in the success of a project. But also, cost is becoming more a factor because these solutions aren't necessarily cheap and they have to quickly drive business value. But the main thing that I can say for sure that we've learned in all of it is there's an incredible power in using this technology to drive organizational and business outcomes. But we can only do it if we can solve for the underlying data issues and surface the right data at the right time to be able to make decisions. And that's why I'm super happy to be joined by two of our best and brightest professionals. First up, you are going to hear from Mr. Eric Vogelpohl. Eric is one of our field CTOs who's got over 20 years of experience in the industry, just helping our customers solve some of the most challenging data problems. So he's going to lead you through a series of demos and education today. But then we've also had Maha join us, who leads our data practice. So he's going to moderate the Q&A. He's going to answer some of your questions. And he's got the team of professionals that have all the hands-on experience to make a lot of this technology work. So as I kick it over to Eric, what I want to frame it up is this is really us just kind of educating you on certain topics. But we're certainly happy to talk more specific about our capabilities towards the end or in follow-up situations if it makes sense. So I'm excited. I'm going to hand it over to you, Eric, and I appreciate everyone being here.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for your leadership. Again, everyone, Eric Vogelpohl. So I want to set a couple of themes for the day, and these are really important to Maha and myself. One is we want this to be experiential. So we're going to get a little hands-on and a little dirty with 3 use cases with GenAI. And 2, we're going to talk really about the patterns of making GenAI and data useful for you and kind of demystify why it's working the way it's working through demos. We're going to spend less time with individual platforms and products and the partners we have. Presidio has a wealth of partners in the GenAI space: SaaS, cloud, on-prem, software, development capabilities. I can't make them all happy here in just 60 minutes. So we're going to really focus on just patterns, but we will spend some time with one cloud data warehouse environment. And finally, guys, let's make this interactive. So throw things in the chat. My friend Maha will help catch. I love your feedback and your thoughts and your challenges as we go. All right. So with that, let's do this. Let's cast a net over GenAI, just in terms of the way Presidio thinks about categorizing the overall enterprise use cases and capabilities. And I'm going to go through these quickly. So, we think about how GenAI can help with natural language conversations, all the co-pilots that we have available to us, the coding assistants. We put these capabilities in the category just chat and code assist. And again, lots of capabilities in this category. The second, all things agents and automation. So if 2023 was the era where we chatted with our PDFs and we chatted with our data, 2024 and beyond is really shaping up to be the era of agentic AI. So I now have software-defined agents that can do work for me and observe conditions. We separate them on purpose. Third, all of the media services that we're getting with GenAI. So pictures and audio and video and text, of course. All the creative content, very disruptive for certain areas of the business. Text to media, media to text, they go end to end, of course. And then one of my favorites is using structured data. So GenAI has the ability to help us with, and we're going to see one of these today, exploring our data in a whole new way, where English is now the new language of analytics. And then synthetic data, the ability to create mass data sets for purposes of privacy and data obfuscation and filling in where you don't have enough particular signals in the noise. GenAI is demonstrating its amazing ability in that area. And then finally, doc processing, right? So the ability to do entity extraction and get meaning out of all the unstructured data that we still have around the enterprise. So just to recap for today, we're going to touch on 3 demos and demystify how this works, I hope, in these 3 categories: the chat, the data, and the doc processing. Okay. All right. So let's go into our first experience. Remember, this was experiential. So our first experience is all around natural language question answer with structured data. In this case, I'm going to use Databricks. It's a wonderful partner of ours. They have a very nice user experience to demonstrate this, so I'm going to use it. However, many other cloud data warehouse environments offer similar capabilities. So let's walk through what you're going to see. So, you're a user, you're on the left, and you ask a simple question. Or you at least want the answer to a simple question. How many blue shirts did we sell last week? Well, the first thing that happened, and of course you've got data in your data lake on the far right. The first thing that happens is these data warehousing environments and BI tools are taking your question, how many blue shirts did we sell last week? And they're adding to that prompt some information that you get out of the data catalog or you get out of your data lake that describes the data that answered those questions. And then it goes to the LLM, it goes to the large language model, the AI model, and then in return, your screen gets the SQL command necessary to answer that question. So in this case, the question was, how many blue shirts did we sell last week? The AI is a great translator. English to SQL is just a language translation, and it knows how to put that together so that finally you get the return. You ask the data lake or the data warehouse, and you get back, well, we sold this many Monday through Saturday, or whatever the date range is. Okay, so that's what you're going to see. Let's see it. So I'm going to get out of this. We're going to jump over to Databricks here. Let me stop sharing.
Yep. So while you're bringing that, Eric, quick question.
Sure.
So I can see how it can fit into the overall life cycle. I know you're bringing up on Databricks. So what would be the positioning of the BI tools which are already out there, like Tableau, Power BI, and things like that?
So it's very interesting what's happening right now as we start to think about these experiences changing the way that we work with data. And the tools like Tableau, Power BI, and others, while they have their chat with your data experiences and your natural language QA experiences, you're seeing that experience get closer to the data warehouse now. It's very interesting. It's as if multiple layers of what we used to have in the data stack are starting to pare down a little bit. Not to say that they don't add value. They add tremendous value, and they will bring their own capabilities there as well. But yeah, we're starting to see a change in what's capable by these unified data estates. All right, let me get my screen shared. So Maha, if you can give me thumbs up that we've got the environment up and running. You should see Databricks here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, so here's what we have. I use this demo all the time because I happen to know it well. It's the bane of my existence. It's all the on-time flight performance. This data set comes from the Department of Transportation Statistics. It's free to download. I think I have all flights in North America from 2010, Jan 1, 2010, all the way till like April of this year, something like that, however many flights that is. And you can see here what it looks like. It's pretty obvious what it looks like. It got the flight date, the flight number, the origin city, the destination city, and then what I have to put up with all the time, the arrival delay minutes and the departure delay minutes, and then of course the airline itself. So if I were an analyst in a company and I was not deft with SQL, or let alone other languages like Python and Pandas and other analytical tools, but we'll just say just SQL in this case. You know, what often happens is if I want to do novel data exploration or data mining, if I don't have those skills, I'm partnering with the data team, and maybe we have to create semantic models, or maybe we need to create tailored dashboards that allow me to ultimately put things in Excel. And I know that's frustrating. And I know that syntax can oftentimes be in the way of what you wanna work on. Well, those days are gone. So let's run through a quick demo here. Normally, I would have to type the SQL. I don't want to type the SQL anymore. So in this case, I have my assistant, my trusted assistant. We'll start a whole new assistant. In this case, it's Databricks. It's just a wonderful platform. And just like we're used to with GPT, I've got a handful of questions that I've already dummied up for us. I'm going to go off here in my notepad, and I'm going to paste that in. So the first one says, I happen to live in Tampa, but I did this one for Atlanta, Georgia. What are the top 5 worst airlines for arrival delay minutes into Atlanta, Georgia for just this year? So this is a pretty interesting query. Again, if you weren't natural to SQL, you know, this is a pretty healthy query you got to write. You've got to write an aggregation. In this case, it's, you know, count or average or whatever it is. And then you want to limit it to 5 because I only want the top 5. And you have to know group by, et cetera. Well, now I just asked the LLM in this tool, and this presents me a way to run this query, and hopefully I get back the answer. So in this case, poor Frontier Airlines is the ¡1 offender of flights for this year into Atlanta, Georgia. But let's make this a little bit harder. That one was a little bit rudimentary. So let's take one that actually requires some multiple step SQL creation. Again, these are things that would be very difficult if you didn't have a SQL background. So in this case, I want to know what the average delay is, arrival and departure, for flights from New York to Omaha. And how does it compare to the overall average delay for flights in the data set? So you can actually see here what the model is reasoning through. And again, because the models are great at language, it's what the L in LLM stands for, they really understand structure of English and structure of SQL. And one of their brilliant capabilities is to translate. In this case, it wrote some pretty sophisticated SQL. It had to write what's called a CTE to kind of do a subquery. And let's go back and throw it in our runtime and see if it works. Now, sometimes we do have mistakes. And you'll see tools like this offer the ability for the model to go back and forth and learn from those mistakes. But yeah, here we go. We have a route-specific average delay that it provided relative to the overall delay. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions, any thoughts on how LLMs are breaking down the barriers we had with SQL syntax? And again, I haven't gotten into Python and Pandas and data science languages and all the other things that models can help with, but this one's extremely powerful. Thoughts, Maha?
Yeah, no, I got like a couple of questions.
Sure.
So from our customers who were like looking at some of these features, their head goes into the mode of, okay, so this looks good. What is it I need to do to take advantage of these? Right? So how can I start leveraging some of these features?
Well, one of the first is a tool and a platform capability. So whatever your data warehouse, your data platform, your data lake, or your BI tool platform, first thing you need to do, ring the bell with those folks and say, guys, tell me what your data democratization story. I like that term, data democratization. It's all about bringing data closer to analysts, removing barriers and removing organizational barriers and technical barriers to get data close to decision makers. That's the only reason we exist in the data world. So step one, ring the bell of your vendors. Step two, guys, you know, there's a lot of people that will say you have to quote unquote get your data ready. In this case, the data that you would have gotten ready for BI use cases in the old world are the same things you need to do today. There's nothing different. Maybe you might want to create some manicured views so that users really only have one table to deal with instead of multiple. The models get a little weaker when it has to do a bunch of joins, but that's okay. You can flatten data out for your customers. That's largely it. If you have the capability to do this and your governance lets you, take advantage of it.
I have a couple of questions on the chat. Thank you. Thanks, Eric. What I'm hearing is that companies will not need to further invest in BI or analytics software tools. Seems like the day-to-day queries are solved in GenAI. What's your take on that?
You know, there's a lot of hot takes out there, and I certainly don't want to speak for the Tableaus and the Microsoft Power BIs and the Google Lookers, the ThoughtSpots, the many others that are available out there. They offer unique experiences of their own, and many of them are powered by GPT-like experiences or LLM experiences. Not all of them. Some of them use different approaches to democratize away from the hard part of doing analytics. But you know, look, we'll see how this plays out. I tend to be a believer that there's a certain class of users out there that have ad hoc questions, just like we've demonstrated, that really don't want to learn a new platform. And if you can put a QA environment or even an environment where they just ask the phone, right? Because we could certainly get there as well. And they just get a simple card back as an answer, and they can make a decision at the pace of business. That would probably be my first kind of compelling way forward. If you have very manicured processes that rely on dashboards and KPIs trended over time, where you want to make certain those KPIs are locked in stone so that they're consistent period over period over period, then you're going to need a BI platform. And that's still true.
Yeah, that's very valid.
Yeah.
I think I have a few more questions coming up. One is, okay, so since the interface looks similar to ChatGPT, one of the questions is your focus mainly with ChatGPT?
Well, this particular platform itself, so Databricks, I believe, uses its own model behind the scenes. I don't believe it is using OpenAI's ChatGPT model or GPT-4 or O. Databricks has invested quite heavily in their own models, of course. So it would not surprise me if they're using their own model behind the scenes. Now, I say, in this case, just Databricks. There are many open source packages and many SaaS providers that can act as the go-between between ChatGPT, if that's literally the model you want to use, if you want to use GPT-4 or 4.0 or 4 Turbo for your chat with your data experience, there are SaaS providers that will allow you to hook those two up together. There's lots of open source packages that do it as well.
Yep, actually, the next question is kind of interrelated. The question is more around, can you talk more about the infrastructure needed to run these LLMs? And are we talking about a separate environment?
Yeah.
Or are we, how IT could manage the overall?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's keep going. Let's park that one. If you don't mind, Maha, park that one and get that gets a little bit deeper in some of the questions that we have at the very last slide, and that'll be great there. All right, so for purposes of time, this was the first experience. I hope you're excited about this. I am. It's a whole new way of working with data that's just brilliant and sublime. You want to jump to the second one, Maha?
Yes.
All right. All right,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, there are other questions which are going to be answered in the subsequent slides. I'll hold them for you.
All right, let me get back here and I'm going to see if I can put this back in full screen mode and get rid of these pesky things. We got through this. All right, experience number 2. This one's one of my favorites. This one's one of my favorites because it's cornball. This is a fun. I have 2 demos here that use just pure code, but I won't scare you with the code. We won't walk through it. We'll just actually see it work. But we're going to do some data extraction. Okay, so here's the setup. Let's say your company is, and I know your company is, littered with scanned contracts and PDFs and, oh gosh, just probably file cabinets full of whatever, not to mention share drives full of PDFs and images that represent documents that are not even semi-structured. They're just purely unstructured. It's just pure narrative. It's a contract that reads like, you know, party of the first party shall blah, 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 the second party, and there's lines in it with names, etc. Obviously, extremely unstructured data. Obviously, companies have pictures of cats everywhere because that's the only thing that models know how to work with. I'm joking. We have call logs, we have chat logs, we have system logs, we have security logs, we have logs everywhere. And of course, we have call recordings from a customer service desk or any other audio that you care about. In the past, Maha, what we had to do in the data science world was we had to either use intelligent document service endpoints like Doc Intelligence for invoice or Doc Intelligence for receipts. And they were trained, they were specific models just trained for what an invoice looks like, or just trained for what a contract looks like. And more often than not, if you wanted to tease out the entities and the sentiment and the tone and the parties and the places and the part numbers and all the aspects that you wanted to get out of that content, if you wanted to pull that out in a data science oriented way, you were building a model, sometimes called a named entity recognition model. There's some others out there, and that's still a way you can do this. However, one of the amazing things that LLMs do, or GenAI does, is its just ability to generalize. And now that they can generalize so well, we're finding far less of a need to use those specific doc intelligence services or those specific one-off models. So I have a cool demo here where we're going to do some entity extraction, just people, places, names, you know, nouns, that kind of stuff. We'll get some reason, context, and a few others out of 2 sets of data. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and switch over, Maha.
Right. And while you're doing it, how do you compare the current performance of these LLMs with the models which were created for doing some of these activities, like NER, named entity recognition? So how would you compare the both?
Well, you know, the models that are hyper specific to NER, so named entity recognition and extraction, even the models, there are some older data science models, and they still take the shape of these deep learning models, just not at the massive scale that LLMs do. They may have a better performance, you know, posture to them. In terms of the number of pages scanned or the number of items labeled. We've seen that before, right? Where I take an invoice and then it puts the bounding boxes and it labels all the components, says this is the seller, this is the purchaser, and on and on and on. And of course, it writes that to metadata so that I can treat it. So, you know, we're very much in this experimental phase, Maha, where, you know, if you came to me and said, Eric, I've got 10,500 page contracts. I don't know that I want to send them all to a cloud endpoint for purposes of token economics or for purposes of speed. Maybe there is a targeted, smaller AI model that would be better suited for that. That may very well be the case. However, I think that window of time is closing. I truly believe that as large language models become smaller and we get small language models running locally and on the edge and on various devices and running in your data centers, that you're going to find that just the pure generalizability of these models will be more and more suited for what we used to train things specifically.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna do, you know what? I'm gonna do the simple chat one first. All right. So here's what we have. Let's assume, I hope you can see that okay. If
Yeah.
that's big enough. Let's assume that you have the call log from, I don't know, years of your customer agent call log. And you can see what one of these call logs look like. You know, they're pretty standard stuff, right? Hi, I'm customer so-and-so, I'm having trouble. And then the agent says, I understand why you're having this problem. Let's work it out, and so on and so forth. This is a highly stylized example that I just dummied up. But let's say, for instance, you know, you wanted to train a specific model, or you wanted to train your call agents, or you wanted to get summary statistics on how well your agents are serving your customers. Yes, there are tons of tools out there that do this, and most call management systems have this capability. But if you didn't, here's a really simple way that we can use a lightweight script. This script took me almost no time to write. We're going to use, in this case, GPT-4 from OpenAI, and we're going to extract the sentiment, the caller's name, the product in question, whether or not the call was resolved. But the best part about it is we're going to tell the model to give us this data back in a data, like in a CSV, so that I can do analytics on it. Like, I just don't want you to give me back my call log. I already have my call log. I want the data back in a table so that I can do some statistics. So here's what we're going to do. I'm just in a development environment, and I've got some code written here behind the scenes. I don't want to scare anybody with it. But what we're going to do is going to hit run now. It's going to take the first 4 entries in that call log. It's going to send them to OpenAI. OpenAI is going to do its job, and it's going to send it back. Hopefully the demo works. So let's hit run now. So right now it's taking the first one and it's sending it to the model. The model is told what to do. It's done the second one. It'll do the third one here, and then finally the fourth. And I've also noted I've given you some token counts of how many tokens we're sending to the models. And I calculated the current price. That's very, very small. I think it rounds to whatever, 1 cent. So these are quite small. And here we go. I've taken what was otherwise a lump of text data that I knew nothing about other than just having the text data, and turned it into a data table. Again, I just did the first 4 to be quick, but it extracted the customer name, whether or not the call was satisfied. It categorized the call. I gave the LLM some parameters and said, hey, if it sounds like it's product return, call it product return. If it sounds like it's general help, label it general assistance. And I gave it a bunch of parameters. We extracted the product item, and I even got the agent's sentiment. So Maha, look at call chat number 2. The agent sentiment here is in a category that our company has called needs coaching. So if we take a look at agent number 2, or call log number 2, which is right here, we can see a little bit of sarcasm. The customer said, I ordered a dress from the website. It didn't fit. I'd like to return it. And the agent was having a bad day that day and said, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure it was our issue with your sizing, because customers never make mistakes, do they? Ha, ha, ha. Clearly not appropriate to have as a conversation. And again, CX tools, customer service tools, they have all of this stuff built in. But if you don't, or if you have a use case that's similar, again, very, very little bit of code. Very low cost. You can even do all this on-prem if you'd like. We could help you with that. We'll talk about that later. And yeah, you could let this rip overnight and probably get, you know, hundreds of thousands of these complete. And the next morning, you've got an analytic ready table for your call. How cool is that?
Yeah.
All right.
With that, actually, since you have printed the dollar amount associated with the calls, actually, there is a question around cost. So companies that successfully implement GenAI, what are the most popular ways to soften the blow on the increased cost?
Yeah, I lovingly call this now token economics, because I think tokens are the unitization of how we work with commercial LLMs. At least the LLMs, the models that we're hitting that are on the internet. So Claude and AWS, Google, all of them. and Mistral, it goes on. The models that you run on-prem, they have a different economic structure because you have to buy hardware for that or allocate resources for that. So maybe it's a more capital-intensive structure. But when it gets to the token economics of using these models, there's a couple tricks to soften the blow a little bit. You can for one decide to use cheaper models, quite frankly. So I default to GPT 4.0, and that's really a bad habit on my part. In the case of OpenAI, there's a much more cost-effective model. GPT 3.5 is still available. Maybe it's called GPT 3.5 Turbo. I don't know. And it has a quite discounted rate. There are other services that provide even cheaper tokens. They're now just in the millions, so it's millions of tokens in. I think it's $5 a million token on the sending side, and maybe it's $10 on the retrieval side. I could have that backwards, but it's something like that per million tokens. And you can see the token count that I provided for that entire web was only 712. And a token, by the way, is a subword. So something like 2/3 tokens make up a word. So that's one way, it's just using a cheaper model. The second is to not provide the model an intensive amount of examples, sometimes called few shot examples. You can get a little wordy with that, and maybe they don't need it, so it starts to reduce the token count. There are now some batch tools. So OpenAI, at least particularly OpenAI, recently released, I don't know how recent it was, maybe the last 6 months, the ability to batch services up. So send it bulks of data, let it work on it, and then send it back later. That's another way of taking advantage of it. And then finally, the economics of spending capital and doing something on-prem or taking advantage of GPT or LLM capable GPUs that you have on site may be a great way.
Perfect. Actually, there is a theme on next 3 questions from Vivek, CJ, and a couple of others, where, hey, the moment we send this data to a service, so are we putting this in a public domain? What other alternates available to handle this more like a private AI?
Yeah.
Any way to secure this?
It's a brilliant question, and it's top of mind space for leaders of, there's these public models, and they ultimately want data to get better and better and better. And of course, we hear about them every day, scraping sites. Maybe they should, or maybe they shouldn't be scraping to enrich the data set. And there's a natural concern, and I think it's appropriately placed that if I send a particular endpoint, particular GenAI company, a lot of my data, and I haven't gone through the process of making certain that we've toggled off all of the do not save my data, do not log my sessions, do not retain my history, do not, all the way down the line, there's a concern that data that I share maybe become training material for the next training run. I'm no attorney. I can't tell you how to go about reasoning through that with the cloud providers. I will, though, tell you that if that level of security and that level of governance is not met through the contractual indemnification being provided by the LLM provider, so the Microsoft, the AWS, the Google, the whoever, and you want to invest in something on-prem that is fully housed on premises, you need no internet connection. These models can run independently. We can certainly help you with that if that rises to that level of concern. But the first thing that I would answer would be saying, meet with your sales reps for the hypervisors and make certain that the levels of do nots meet your criteria.
And hosting our LLMs, though it is like in the early stages, these open source like publicly available LLMs are in the early stages, but these are evolving over time, right? So yeah. I think I'm seeing the evolution in the last 3 months have been drastically different. Yeah.
All right, let's get to the second experience in this category. So here's what I did. I went out and I found a bill of sale and I wrote it fictitious. I filled it out. It's just a PDF. Just assume this is any PDF that you've got, typical PDF. I filled in, I'm buying a 2018 Honda motorcycle, whatever. And here I am, I live at 123 Main Street in Tampa. It's whatever. I got a sale date and I'm buying it from John Doe. But Maha, note, I did a trick on this one. I did not sign this. I purposely did not sign this contract. So I assume companies have forms like this, again, shoved in content management systems, document them, SharePoints, on and on and on, or file shares. And wouldn't it be cool if we had some mechanism, again, without having to train bespoke models on, you know, non-specific contract types like this, in this case, a bill of sale, but it could be anything. Wouldn't it be cool if I could just write a quick routine, send the PDF without extracting any of the text, without doing any of that hard work, just let the model reason over it, answer the questions, and give me that data back? Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, that would be nice. So I did that. So I'm just in this new notebook here, and I just gave myself a little visual of what we're doing. Again, I'm just taking the individual page that we had on our bill of sale just as it is, just as a PDF. So I didn't render it as an engine or an image. I didn't extract the text. I didn't do any of those things. It's just a PDF. I sent it to the LLM and I gave it some instructions. I said, I want you to find the purchaser, the seller, the vehicle, the model, and then I want you to tell me if there's no signature or if the required signatures are blank, you need to mark this contract as non-executed or true or false or something like that. Again, just a handful of code, handful of lines of code, and let's let it rip and see if it works. So I'm going to hit clear outputs and we'll hit run. Okay, so my code is connecting to the model. It's uploading the PDF, and that little command says that was successful. It's creating kind of a chat thread with the model, and it read the model, or it read the PDF, and it returned to me this output. And I wanted the output to look like this as opposed to a table because I just wanted to read it this way. And it says, this one, it screwed up. It hallucinated here. Bad demo. It said it was present and it's not present. Let's run this again and see if it says that it is or isn't fully executed. But it did extract correctly the, the seller, the, buyer, the item, etc. Yeah, for some reason, it still thinks this one may have a signature on it. I don't know why. Earlier in the test, it was saying no. But this is actually a great example of some of the settings that you need to make with models. Things like the seed, for example, is a parameter that you can provide a model to say you get a little bit more repeatability. The other is temperature. So the smaller the temperature, the less creative, the higher the temperature, the more creative. That's about all you can control. But this actually brings up a really good point. And that's that when you have a business process, in this case, breaking down a PDF into its parts, when you have a business process that is high stakes, in other words, you really need the output to have high precision, a very low tolerance for mistakes like this. What we're seeing more and more and more now is the usage of these agent frameworks, where Maha, I can send this PDF to model number one. Model number one does its job, comes back with some reasoning on why it said the signatures were present. And then if it's a very high-risk business process, maybe we send it to smaller model two or a different model and say, double check signatures present. And if they conflict, maybe we have a way of dealing with conflicts. That's one way to do that. The other thing that this brings up is that, the exciting part about GenAI models and the systems that we can build with them, the systems that we build with them, they are not always deterministic. They're not always perfectly precise, like all the other IT systems we've had for years that deal with things like logic and math, and they always have the same answer. These work a little bit differently. Yeah, so there you go.
Actually, that brings in a different perspective as well, right? So if you look at the signature, it actually says your name, which means there is the multimodality which has to come in to
Yeah.
really specify what the signature means, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. Maybe I could say co-seller signature, co-seller's address, these two places, purchaser signature,
Yeah, it just
purchaser's
took this
printed
one.
name. Maybe there's some more testing we need to do there to validate that. To really draw attention. And again, this may be back to original question. This may be an area where if you have hundreds of thousands of bills of sale and they all look like this structure, maybe a specific targeted NER model or a traditional model prior to LLMs would be more appropriate. You might get better speed and you might get higher precision.
Right. It's awesome.
All right, let's keep going. We're in good time here, so I'm going to stop share. We're going to jump back to our handy dandy presentation here. We're going to keep going. Okay, so this is experience 3, and this is the oft common, very, very, very popular use case. Sometimes it's called RAG, which just is a term that means retrieval, which means I search some index for data about a particular domain. Augmented generation. So essentially all this is a mouthful of saying chat with your data. And you want to make it very, very specific to a particular domain in your organization. So maybe it's customer care, maybe it's safety, maybe it's field ops, it could be finance, whatever it happens to be. You curate some data particular to those domain areas. And then with some magic that we'll get here in just a second, we'll actually have a meaningful conversation in a whole new way. So let's take a look at how this works structurally. So again, same theory as before. You're at your desk and you used to type, search terms into SharePoint or search terms into a document management system, and you relied on search. Well, that's fine. Search was great, but we're now in a new era. Now I can do search plus reasoning, and that's essentially what the RAG pattern lets me do. So in step 1, I make a prompt. How do I add a new rider to an insurance policy for my 16-year-old, whatever. It's going to go to some web app server. It's going to look up the matching content to your question. It doesn't have to be perfectly matching. It just has to be in the neighborhood of how do I add a rider to an insurance policy? Maybe those particular words weren't perfectly found, but these new search tools are really good at just finding the neighborhood of documents as opposed to specific things. It sends all of that to the LLM. So your prompt plus the content. And of course, the LLM, just like before, does its reasoning magic, and it gives me back my answer. The real, I think, impressive part of the RAG architecture, frankly, is not the LLM. It's not. The real magic here, the reason that this is such a powerful use case, and it ushers in, particularly for customer support reps, it ushers in such a novel way of answering questions. It really has to do with that index. So I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, we got introduced to a new indexing style, some vector, but that's just a bunch of math stuff. It has this ability now, like I said earlier, to find content that's in the index that is just in the neighborhood of relatedness to a particular question. And once we had the ability to do that and we send it all to the model's just doing what the model does. It's really good at writing very eloquent sentences and distilling information. So let's watch this work. Oh, I will add one other thing, Maha, and this is something that we're helping customers with more and more. Notice earlier, if you remember earlier, I said kind of 2023 was this era of chat with your data. Well, if you notice that in our solution here, I'm just having documents feed the index, flat documents, PDFs, text, HTML files, those type of things, FAQs, and that's fine. But what if the question is, what's the current XYZ, or what's the current, shipping information for my order status? Well, that's not going to be in a document. That's going to be in an order management system. So now imagine a world where in this same pipeline, instead of just looking up content in an index, I can have a little agent running and listening to that question. And if the agent says, I need to get that out of our order management system, or I need to get that information out of our ERP, it can go look that up on your behalf. And right in number 3, stage number 3, just inject that information. The LLM sees it, reasons the response, and away you go. You think you're getting a real-time answer back from your index? You're not. It's actually coming directly from whatever system would have that information.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
answered the intermediate question which I had, where initially we started with, hey, talk with your data warehouse. Then we talked about chatting with your static documents. Probably,
Right.
that's a piece I didn't see it in your slide before. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you answered that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, it would be crazy if Presidio, are you seeing the Ask Presidio screen, by the way?
Yeah.
I think you are. It would be crazy if Presidio talked about GenAI as much as we love talking and helping our customers with GenAI, if we did not have our own internal Ask Presidio. And we do. This is our own internal Ask Presidio. And notice underneath Ask Presidio, I said supporting sales and marketing. This is a big belief we have that if you go try to create the RAG solutions that overlay all the content you have in SharePoint, all the content you have on file drives, all the content you have shoved in PDFs and drawings and on, that you may be casting a net a little wider than you may want to tolerate. There's a lot of ambiguity in the data that you've retained in those content management systems. So we're a big believer that while the RAG pattern and the associated tools are phenomenally powerful, you should treat them like systems, and systems need some care and feeding. So for Ask Presidio, we have all of our white papers, our marketing content, our use cases, things that help sales and marketing with client communications and bringing on new sales reps. So this is a website. It's an app we have. This happens to be an open source app. It's a very nice open source app. We've made some slight modifications to it. And you can see here, I've given 3 quick little whatever. So I'll just click on this first one just to get the thing flowing. Typical pattern, right? So just like we said before, I think the question was, something about our digital workshop offerings. Digital workshop and offering does not necessarily have to be in every document. Again, the vector store or that new search index does an amazing job at finding all the adjacent related concepts to those 3 words. I have it in a very verbose mode. So I've told the model, be very verbose with your answer. And it certainly is. So if you're a new sales rep at Presidio and you're looking at terabytes of content we have as a very large organization, it can be overwhelming. So these are great experiences to have for QA. Just like if you were I feel so sorry sometimes for customer service reps. I've seen them, and they have something like 50 tabs open in Chrome because they have to hunt for all of the answers to these various questions they get when folks call up. If they could just have a simple environment like this that found this level of detail. Now, notice that on the bottom, we said, hey, you have to cite all your sources. So in this case, it has to cite all of its sources. So if we want to see the exact content where that came from, it didn't hallucinate this, it didn't make it up. This is exactly the content that it reasoned through that answer on. And they can print this off or read it or go do whatever they need to do. What do you think about that, Maha?
Yeah, I have a very basic question.
Sure.
If I see the output, this resembles a little bit more on the copilots which are out there.
Yeah.
What would you differentiate this with, and where would you need this versus copilots?
Well, it's a great question. We love what the copilots are doing. Microsoft got tons of copilots. They're everywhere in the Microsoft 365 space. I use the M365 copilot. I use it predominantly in Teams, quite frankly. I don't use it to do a whole bunch of all of the SharePoint stuff. I have access to terabytes of Presidio data and SharePoint, and it's just a lot. It's very overwhelming. So I really see this as a differentiator, quite frankly. I think there's a world for both. I use the co-pilots in my office productivity housekeeping space. In the morning, I say, what's up with customer XYZ, or what's my day look like today? And it does a great job at doing that. But for example, if I were a sales rep and I used, say, this prompt, I just put this prompt in, write an introductory email to John Smith, ABC, a manufacturing firm, about Presidio and how we can help, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to hit go. I think what you'll find are two advantages. Number one, you'll likely have a cost advantage from a solution like this, because this is not unitized at $10, $20, $30, $40 a user a month, whatever the co-pilots are for the systems you use. And again, they're great. This only costs the hosting fee, or if you hosted it on-prem, it would, however you've allocated that capital. There's no license, no end user license associated with it. Not only that, but I can get very, very, very specific with the prompt. I can get very specific with things like content filtering out of the index. I can give users the ability to override the prompt. So maybe we had a sales rep that came in and said, hey, I'm a sales rep dedicated to just state and local and higher education. I want to talk to my customers in that area. Please write an email for blah, 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 as if you are that role. And this system or systems like it will take on that persona. To do that with co-pilots is a little tricky. Co-pilots are kind of designed to be your companion throughout your productivity life.
Generic.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to answer it.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So we have one outstanding question, which is around having a private AI and
Sure.
hosted model. So if you can touch upon that, there are like 3 questions which are around that.
Let's do it. And Liz, just FYI for tracking time, we've got what, 6 minutes.
7
So
minutes.
bring
Yeah,
Dan back in.
we
We're
have
good
our
to go.
Dan already in. Dan is
All
there.
right.
So
He was
he's
here all
listened.
along.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Sorry. Answer your ask your question again. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's more around,
us out.
hey, what are the other options of hosting your models, having a private version of it? And
Yes.
Presidio can help with that.
Yeah. So first of all, there's probably, just generally speaking, we'll just say there's 3 ways you can host an LLM system, inclusive of the index and the website, and of course the model itself. One is just fully on-prem. Just literally, you download an available foundation model or a frontier model, things like Llama 3 or Mistral or any of the others that are available out there. It's probably going to be some Llama 3 derivative. That tends to be the most popular for personal hosting. Just recently, they released a very, we'll say a medium-sized one. It's a 400 or 405, and getting great press and scoring quite well. So you can do it entirely on-prem, where the model is hosted on GPUs on-prem in your data center. And then as long as you have the capability of running any container application, so an OpenShift, a Docker, a Tanzu, whatever your normal app hosting environment is, there are solutions that Presidio has, and there are open source solutions that can wrap around those models the web apps and the indexes that you need to make what you just saw work. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is a hybrid model. Let's say you want the web app and maybe the index to be on-prem, and you have found a third-party service that can just run the model for you. Maybe they've got a really good token economics associated with just inferencing the model, and you want your web app and your index on-prem. User goes to your web app, gets the index data, just calls that portion out to the secure model that's hosted in a cloud somewhere or a colo, and it would work. We'll call that hybrid. And then finally, you can go to the hyperscalers. So all 3 hyperscalers have this type of solution if you wanted to go that route. There's generally speaking, that's the 3 ways of doing it. We can help you with all 3.
Right. Awesome. I think we answered pretty much all the questions.
Good deal.
Wow, Eric and Maha, that was fantastic. As always, I learned something from listening to the two of you and the experiences that both of you bring. For the team that's here, there's still a lot of people that are hanging out with us that started. We appreciate you sticking with us. I hope that everyone found this useful and learned something. And where we just wanted to kind of leave it is, regardless of where you are in your journey, whether you're trying to find an initial use case, whether you're trying to solve some of the most complex data problems, whether you're trying to even pick the right LLM to be able to build your solution and use case on top of. We've been closely watching this. It's changing on a regular basis. And we've got teams of professionals that are here to help our customers regardless of where they are in the journey. So we hope you learned something. And as always, feel free to reach out to our marketing team or your account teams directly. We're happy to engage regardless of where you are. And with that, I think it is a wrap. So I appreciate you being here with us today. And Liz, I don't know if you have any last closing remarks for the team out here.
No, I think the only closing remarks, we're going to say thank you to Maha, to Eric, and to Dan for joining us today.